Chapter 1. Below the Waterline. You climb down the short ladder from the companionway, one hand finding each rung by feel, and the crew quarters open around you, low and narrow, and holding a warmth particular to enclosed spaces, a warmth that keeps the smell of things, salt, old wood, something diesel, dark and faintly mineral underneath, as though the sea has been stored here for years and pressed itself into every surface, into every grain. You find the floor with one foot and then the other, and stand a moment letting your eyes settle into the soft amber of the single lamp. The bunk is on the port side, a wooden shelf barely wider than your shoulders, fitted into the curve of the hull as if it was always meant to be here, as if the ship was built around the idea of someone lying exactly in this place. 2 steps below the waterline. You know this not from any sign, but from the way the harbour sounds arrive, filtered and softened, reaching you through salt water and steel and old timber, as though from the next room over, from somewhere that is already quiet. A canvas curtain hangs half drawn across the open edge of the bunk, its hem frayed to a soft blur, the fabric heavy with years of sea air. You draw it a little further with 2 fingers and feel the rough weave against your skin, dry and faintly waxy, the way old canvas goes when it has been wet and dried so many times it has begun to forget what softness was. The curtain swings closed behind your hand and hangs still. At the foot of the bunk, a wool blanket waits, folded with the careful precision of someone who has made a bunk in rough weather and knows that neatness is its own kind of preparation. You lift it. Heavier than expected, dense, the fibers coarse enough to catch against your palm, and it carries the smell of all the nights it has ever warmed. Salt and sleep, and something faintly animal still beneath both, something old and good. You sit on the edge of the mattress, which gives just enough beneath you, the canvas ticking sighing softly as it accepts your weight. Through the porthole, thick glass, salt hazed to a mild opacity, the brass fitting green with age, the harbour shows itself in narrow pieces, a strip of dark water holding the orange of the dock lamps on its surface, a length of piling, the shadow bulk of a mooring rope. Gulls call somewhere above, their voices arriving strange and hollow, and a little distant, as though the water below is already interpreting them. High and metallic, the sound of rigging moves in a small wind, irregular and unhurried, chiming once, then pausing, then again, the way a clock sounds when no one is counting. There is a voice on the dock, then another. Neither one belongs to anything you need to follow. You swing your legs up and lie back, and a pillow receives your head, flat and firm and cool against your cheek. The ceiling of the bunk is bare wood, close enough to touch if you raised a hand, and the grain of it runs in long pale lines you can trace with your eyes. Lines that begin and end in shadow at either side, going nowhere, leading nowhere, needing to go nowhere at all. The trawler shifts at the mooring, a slow, settled movement, barely a breath, and somewhere below you the harbour water knocks once against the hull, low and dull, and is quiet again. The diesel smell is gentler now. The wool blanket waits at your feet. The rigging chimes and pauses and chimes. You are 2 steps below the waterline, and the world is out there and muffled, and you are in here, enclosed and still. You notice the engine before you hear it change, a shift in the vibration rather than the pitch. Something that had been below your attention becoming something you can almost feel in the wood beneath you. The idle chug that had been there all along, companionable and low, steadies now into something deliberate, something working. And then you feel it in your whole back, pressed against the mattress, a long reluctance, and then a giving way as the mooring ropes go slack somewhere above you, and the dock releases what it has been holding. Through the porthole, the harbour begins to slide. The orange street lamps of the quay arrive first in the glass, blurred slightly by the salt haze, warmer than the sky above them, and then they begin to move, drifting from one edge of the round frame toward the other at the pace of something unhurried, the pace of something that cannot be stopped now that it has started. Their reflections follow on the black water below, stretched long and trembling, orange columns pulling apart and rejoining on the small chop of the harbour mouth, never quite still, never quite gone. The sounds come one by one, as though the harbour is offering them up in order of departure. First the gull, one long call, close enough to be the same bird you heard before, or close enough that it doesn't matter, and the cry comes through the porthole glass, slightly thinned, slightly higher than it would sound on the open deck, and then it passes behind you and is gone. Then a shout from the quay, a single word you cannot make out, not meant for you, trailing off before it finds an answer. Then the hollow, metallic clank of something releasing, a fender, a chain, a fitting you cannot name, the sound of things being let go of, dull and final and not sad at all, only complete. And then the lamps of Svolver are at the edge of the porthole, slowing now as the trawler rounds to meet the open water, the lights gathering into a cluster that glows orange-warm against the dark slope of the hillside above the town. And you watch them from the narrow shelf of your bunk, from 2 steps below the surface, and they are still, and you are the one moving, though it does not feel like movement, only like the world rearranging itself quietly around you while you remain exactly here. The water sounds change too, the lap and knock of the harbour giving way to something broader, longer, a slow roll that lifts the bow and returns it, lifts and returns, already finding the pattern it will keep for hours. The last lamp slides from the porthole. The glass shows only black water now, and the faintest smear of orange in the distance behind you, and your own dim reflection in the thick glass, barely there, already fading. And then the reflection too is gone, absorbed into the dark water moving past outside, and there is only the deep working hum of the engine and the long slow breath of the sea and the weight of the wool blanket you have pulled across yourself without quite deciding to. The harbour is behind you now. The open water is all around, and the bunk holds you, and the hull holds the bunk, and the sea holds everything, rocking slowly, and carrying you out. Beyond the breakwater, the swell finds its own slow rhythm. A long, unhurried breathing beneath you, lifting the hull gently, holding it and easing it back down again. It is a slow, considered thing, a long, unhurried rise, as though the vessel beneath you is taking a breath, gathering itself, deciding, and then the swell moves on beneath the hull and the bow settles again, gently, with a long exhale of weight returning to the water. This is different from the harbour. The harbour's chop was quick and small and business-like. This is something else entirely, something ancient and patient, a rhythm the sea has been keeping long before there were ships on it, long before there were people to notice. You feel it through the mattress first, a slow tilt, barely perceptible, and then a release. And again, the bunk rocks with a deliberateness that feels almost considered, almost like permission, and your body begins, without any instruction from you, to accept it. Through the porthole at your left shoulder, you watch the breakwater slide sideways and out of frame. For a moment it was there, a dark line of concrete and stone, a few amber lights along its top edge reflecting in broken pieces on the moving water below. And then it is gone, and what remains in the small oval of glass is the fjord itself, wide and dark and opening ahead, the mountains on either shore reduced now to shapes, to black silhouettes against a sky that has softened from charcoal to something deeper, something without a name for its particular shade of dark. You hear it before you understand what it is. A dry, interior percussion, like fingertips resting against a drum. A gentle, almost thoughtful ticking on the steel hull just beyond where your shoulder presses the mattress. Individual drops, each one distinct, each one arriving with a small, clean sound and then absorbed into the general quiet of the vessel moving forward. There is nothing urgent in it. The rain is not a storm, it is a consideration. A soft event the night is conducting at its own unhurried pace. The hull curves around you. You are aware of the thickness of the steel wall beside you, and the thinness of it at the same time, aware that beyond it the water is very close, perhaps a metre, perhaps less, moving past in long dark sheets while the rain continues its light percussion on the outside surface, and you lie in warmth on the inside surface, and the distance between those two facts feels like everything. The bow lifts again. Slow and slower. There is spray on the porthole now, a fine mist that softens the glass, that makes the few lights visible outside. A buoy, perhaps, somewhere in the middle distance, a slow orange pulse, blurred and gentle, like something seen through gauze, like a memory of light rather than light itself. You watch it without trying to identify it. It is simply there, and then it is simply not there, swallowed by the mist and the dark, and you find you do not mind its going. The swell lifts and releases. The rain ticks on the hull. The mountains are behind you now, or perhaps beside you. You have lost track of the ship's bearing, which feels exactly right, which feels like the correct thing to have lost. The wool blanket across your legs has grown warm where your knees touch it, and your shoulders have settled deeper into the mattress than you noticed them going, and the bow lifts and releases, and the rain ticks gently on, and the fjord opens ahead into water you cannot see and do not need to. Not a decision. It is further down than sound, a throb that lives in the structure of things, that moves through the steel plating of the hull and up into the wooden frame of the bunk, and from there into your shoulder blades, into the base of your skull, into the long muscles along your spine that have, without your noticing, been slowly softening since you lay down. It is a pulse, steady, unhurried, purposeful. The ship knows where it is going. The engine knows its work. Neither of them requires anything from you. The rain on the hull keeps its own quieter counter-rhythm. Still that dry, interior ticking, each drop arriving at its own small interval, not quite regular, not quite random, something in between that the ear follows for a moment and then releases. Because following it is too much like effort, and there is no effort needed here. Through then, you feel the engine's pulse most clearly, a vibration that is almost below the threshold of feeling, that you would not describe as movement if someone asked you, but that is undeniably there, a fact moving through the bunk frame and the mattress and the wool blanket and into your body, as regular as a heartbeat, as indifferent as the sea. Beyond the hull, beyond the thin steel wall and the inch of dark water and everything beyond it, the sea extends in every direction. You are aware of this in a simple, uncomplicated way. The way you might be aware of the sky above a field when you are lying in grass, vast and dark, and entirely uninvolved in your presence here. The sea does not know, the ship is on it. The water moving past the hull does not note the passage. The depth beneath the keel is deep, whether or not you think about it. There is something in this that is not frightening, but almost the opposite. A weight lifted, a thing released, because nothing that large and that indifferent requires anything of you at all. The engine pulses, slow and steady. The rain continues its soft work on the hull. You notice, without quite intending to, that you have stopped tracking the individual drops, that the sound has smoothed itself into something closer to a texture than an event. A general quiet presence against the steel, like the sound a room makes when it is very still, and you have only just noticed the stillness. The engine hums beneath that, and beneath the engine hum is the hull moving through water, a long, low pressure against the dark, and beneath that only depth. Your skull presses against the pillow. The pulse moves through it like something remembered. Your shoulders are heavier than they were. Heavier in the good way, the way that means they have given up holding anything, the way that means the mattress is doing that work now and has been doing it for some time. The wool blanket across your chest holds a warmth that is your own warmth, returned to you slowly, evenly. The bow lifts, releases. The rain ticks on. The engine holds its even note, unremarkable, faithful, carrying you forward through all that dark water, through the rain, through the quiet, steadily and slowly and on. Chapter 5. Harbour lights dissolving. You turn your face toward the porthole, just slightly, just enough to find the glass with your eyes, and Svolver is still there. Its lights strung along the dark shore in amber and orange, in the warm colors of sodium and tungsten, each one small now, smaller than you first remembered them, when the vessel was still close to the quayside, and the sounds of the harbour were still particular and near. The rain on the glass is doing something to those lights. It is catching each beam and pulling it a little sideways, a little down, so that nothing holds its shape cleanly. Every lamp along that shore has grown a halo, not a hard ring but a soft, breathing smear of light, the way amber bleeds into the dark when the dark is wet. You watch them without trying to watch them, the way you might attend to something at the edge of sleep, aware of it, not grasping for it. The fjord is taking them. You can feel this in the slow way the cluster of lights shifts toward the center of the porthole, then drifts to one edge, then recenters as the hull moves to a long, low arc. Each time the vessel lifts on a swell, you lose sight of the shore for a moment, and each time it settles again, the lights are fractionally further, fractionally smaller, the individual sources harder to separate from one another. What was once a constellation of distinct points, the orange light at the end of the pier, the warmer cluster near the waterfront buildings, the single high lamp on the hillside, has begun to compress, to blend, to blur into something simpler. There is a warmth still coming from them, or the idea of warmth. You are not cold. The bunk holds your heat, the wool holds your heat, the enclosed space of the cabin holds everything in. But the lights remind you of windows, of lit rooms, of the particular amber that a lamp throws on a wall when everything outside is dark and wet. That color. You have always liked that color. It becomes a smear, then a streak, then, as the rain intensifies for a moment, and the glass clouds slightly with moisture, a single warm point, barely distinguishable from the rain glow that surrounds it. The vessel climbs a long swell, pauses at the crest, just for a breath, just for the time it takes the hull to decide its next direction. Comes down the far side. You glance away, the wool against your collarbone, the sound of the engine through the hull, low and continuous, the texture of a sound you have stopped hearing because it has become indistinguishable from silence. You glance back toward the porthole. The shore is gone. There is only the glass, rain-streaked and dark, and beyond it the night of the fjord, and somewhere much further behind you now, somewhere past the rain and the black water and the turning of the vessel through its course, Svolver, its lights, its amber warmth, its pier and its hillside lamp, receding into distance too great to see. You do not feel the absence as a loss. It is simply how it is now. You are in the between place, the place without harbour, the place that is only motion and water, and the faithful sound of the engine carrying you forward. The porthole holds its dark. The rain ticks on. You let your head settle more fully into the pillow, and you breathe, and the dark outside is simply the dark outside, and it asks nothing of you at all. Chapter 6. Open water. The porthole is black now, fully and completely black, the kind of black that has no depth to it, or all the depth there is, which comes to the same thing from where you lie. The rain runs in thin channels down the glass, and when the vessel lifts to a swell, you see, for just a moment, the pale flare of a breaking crest somewhere out there, and all that dark, white, and brief as something glimpsed, and then immediately forgotten, and then the black returns total and complete, and the rain runs on. You can feel this without quite having noticed when it happened. Earlier, back in the harbour mouth, the water moved in shorter rhythms, restless, interrupted, shaped by the land around it. Now each swell arrives differently. It comes from a long way off. You can tell by the way it announces itself gradually, a slow gathering lift from somewhere beneath the hull, patient and broad, nothing like the quick choppy things the harbour sent. The vessel rises with it, not fighting it, not pitching against it, but simply answering, the way something large and unhurried answers a question it has heard before. The bow comes up, and you feel this in your chest, in the gentle redistribution of your weight across the mattress. Then the crest, that brief pause at the top, a moment of almost stillness, almost perfect horizontal quiet. Then the long, slow descent down the back of the swell, and then the weight, and then the next one. Somewhere above you, up through the layers of hull and steel and whatever the trawler is made of in its bones, a sound reaches you. The mast, making a low note against the wind, not an alarm, not a warning. More like a voice that has said this same thing in this same tone 10,000 times, and has long since stopped expecting an answer. A complaint without urgency. The kind of sound that means things are working exactly as they should. A moment later, aft, somewhere behind your feet and down and away, the hull speaks in a different register. A low groan at a joint, the specific sound of metal working against metal in the way it was designed to work, the way it has worked across every sea this vessel has ever crossed. These are the sounds of something that knows what it is doing out here. You are the visitor, the trawler is not. It has done this before. It knows the weight of a long swell and the way to meet it, and it knows the sound the mast makes in a north wind, and it knows the particular groan of that joint aft, which is not a fault but a language, a small and consistent announcement of structural integrity, of everything holding, of everything doing exactly what it was made to do. You lie very still. The swell lifts you slowly, holds you at the crest, just for a breath, lets you down slowly, and you breathe with it, without trying to, without having decided to. It simply happens that your body has found the rhythm and begun to follow it, up and the small pause and down. The porthole shows its black. The rain runs the glass. A white crest appears somewhere out there, sudden and distant and pale, and then is gone. And the black returns, and the rain returns, and the swell arrives again from its long distance, patient and broad, and the vessel answers it. And you go up slowly, and you pause, and you come down slowly. And the mast says its word in the wind above you, and the hull answers from somewhere aft. And all of this is only sound, only motion, only the reliable working of a vessel that knows exactly where it is, and where it is going, and how. Chapter 7. The Bunk Holds You. You notice, without quite meaning to, that the bunk has edges, not sharp ones, but soft and rounded ones, smoothed by years and years of salt air, and the gentle grip of hands reaching in the dark. And you notice them now where they sit close at your shoulders, perhaps 3 or 4 inches of clearance, no more, and something in you registers this as narrowness, as enclosure, and then, a moment later, with no decision on your part, that registration shifts and it becomes something else entirely, something deep and quiet and still. The bunk is not small. The bunk is the exact size of a body. Your body, it was built with this in mind, this particular envelope of space, this deliberate proportion, and the slight pressure you feel at your left shoulder where the board sits close is not the bunk crowding you, but the bunk knowing where you are, confirming it, saying, here, you are here, within this, held in this, kept in this. The wool blanket lies across your chest. It is heavier than you expected, a proper weight, a real and considered weight, not the thin drape of something decorative, but the settled, deliberate pressure of something made to do exactly this, to lie across a body in a bunk on a vessel in motion and hold it still, Hold it close, hold it down in the most gentle and certain of ways, and you feel the weight of it at your sternum first, heavy and warm, and then it spreads, and you feel it at your ribs and then lower, across your belly where your breath moves quietly, and then it spreads, and you feel it at your ribs moves quietly, and then at your thighs, which are beginning to release now without your asking them to. The long muscles there softening, unclenching, giving themselves gradually to the mattress beneath, down, down, down. The mattress is firm, and it is beginning to warm beneath the wool, beneath the thin cotton of your clothing. The surface that was cool an hour ago has taken on your heat, given it back, built it into something that now meets you with an equal and matching warmth, so that you cannot quite tell where you end and where the warmth begins. Your lower back, which held something, some slight habitual tension you carry without knowing it, has let it go. You notice the mattress there now, holding that place, receiving the weight of it. Holding that place, receiving the weight of it, cradling it, supporting it. Your shoulders soften downward, not because you told them to, because the bunk asked them, and they agreed. They slipped away, they dissolved, they sank, they settled. The sides press close at your right shoulder too, and you feel it there, that faint, sure presence, the wood 3 inches away in the dark. And it is not a wall keeping you in, but a surety, a boundary that is also a reassurance, that says this is the shape of where you are, and where you are is exactly the right amount of space, exactly the right amount of space, exactly the right amount of time, and time slows down, and time stretches out, and time is gentle. The vessel moves and the bunk moves with it, and you move with the bunk, and none of this asks anything of you. None of this requires anything. None of this needs anything. The swell lifts the bow and the motion comes to you as a slow rolling, a rocking that takes the whole weight of you and borrows it for a moment and returns it. And your arms, which are resting now at your sides on top of the blanket, are heavy, genuinely heavy, the kind of heavy that happens only when muscles have truly stopped working, when they have let go of the last thing they were holding and simply rested, and you're holding and simply rested. And your hands are open, the fingers have uncurled, there is nothing in them, and nothing they need to hold, and nothing they need to do. The rain against the port light, a soft whisper, a hush, a murmur, the low word the hull speaks somewhere below, a rumble, a deep vibration, the wool across your chest rising with your breath and falling, slowly falling, falling, falling. And you fall with it, and you are held, and you are still, and you are home, and you are safe, and you are her, and you are letting go, and you are drifting, and you are sinking, and you are sleeping. Chapter 8. From the ground up. The swell arrives again from its long distance, patient, broad, unhurried, and as the bow lifts, as the whole vessel gathers itself and rises, you feel it at the soles of your feet first. A rising sensation, not strong, not sudden, but present and clear, a gentle upward pressure through the blanket, through the mattress, through the heels where they rest against the firm surface below. You let your attention rest there for a moment, at the very bottom of yourself, at the soles, which are warm now and still, held in the small dark of the bunk, enclosed in wool and warmth and the slow working of the ship. The pressure comes and goes with the swell, and you feel it, and then it passes, and the bow begins its long, unhurried return, and your heels settle again, and the pressure softens. You let your attention travel upward, slowly, without effort, into the heels themselves, where the bone sits solid inside the soft tissue, where the warmth has gathered deep. Your heels are heavy against the mattress, not uncomfortably heavy, heavily in the way of things that have been resting long enough to stop pretending otherwise, to stop holding any part of their weight for themselves. The mattress receives them completely, and they give into the calves. The long muscles there are resting now, lying flat against the surface, no longer braced, no longer working. You feel the slight pressure of the mattress along the whole length of each one, the firmness underneath, the warmth that is built where fabric has been held close against skin for this long. The calf muscles are thick with rest, heavy and warm and still, and the swell comes again, and they do not brace for it, they only receive it and rise slowly and come slowly back. Your knees have uncurled. You notice this, how some time earlier they held a slight readiness, the knees of someone who had not yet decided to stay. They have decided now. They are open, loose, the joints slack and warm in the dark, and the blanket falls across them without resistance, takes the shape of them, settles into the backs of your thighs. The long weight of the legs is here, resting against the mattress, and the warmth beneath the blanket has reached this place thoroughly by now, has moved into the muscle and the tissue. The warmth you brought with you and the warmth the mattress returned, all of it now one continuous, uninterrupted warmth, from the soles of your feet to where your thighs press gently against the wool above. The swell comes again. The bow lifts slowly, and this time, as it lifts, you notice that your breath has already begun to match it. You did not decide this. At some point between the last swell and this one, your lungs found the rhythm, the long, slow rise as the sea rises, the long, slow fall as the sea returns, and took it for their own. Your chest lifts, slowly, and at the top there is a pause, the way the bow pauses at its height before the long descent, and then your chest falls, slowly, and the mattress receives you again, and the blanket settles, and the thighs are warm, and the calves are warm, and the heels are resting against the firm surface, and the soles of your feet are still in the small dark at the end of the bunk, and the sea takes one more breath, and so do you, slowly. And you do not need to know what comes next. Chapter 9. Settling deeper. Your hips are resting now, and you become aware of them in the way you become aware of something only after it has already been still for a long time. The bunk is warm where your body has been lying, and that warmth is its own kind of presence, a shape made of heat that fits you exactly, that has formed itself around you in the minutes since you lay down, and you feel it now along your outer hips, along the sides of your thighs where the blanket folds. A closeness that is almost companionable, almost like a hand resting there. And as the rain finds the hull again with its soft, irregular tapping, you turn your attention upward, slowly, past the hips, past the place where the hip bones cease and the softer belly begins, and you notice your abdomen now, rising and falling, rising with each breath in a gentle arc, the blanket lifting with it very slightly, the cool air moving across the top edge of the fabric, and then falling as the breath releases and the warmth returns and the blanket settles again, each cycle taking longer than the last, or perhaps only feeling that way, which amounts to the same thing. Beneath your abdomen, the lower back presses into the mattress, and this is where the body often holds things without knowing it, a low, flat tension, barely noticeable, more like weight than pain. The accumulated posture of the day, of the crossing, of the hours you sat watching the coastline pull away through the porthole. And now you let it go, not by doing anything, but simply by noticing it, and the noticing is enough, and the mattress receives the small extra weight of that release, and the bunk does not move, and the ship moves instead, gently, carrying you both. The engine hums beneath the rain. A single note, low and continuous, felt more in the bones than heard with the ears, and it has been there since Bordeaux, and it will be there through the night, and it asks nothing of you, it simply continues, the way breathing continues, the way the swell continues, and you are part of that continuity now, not separate from it, not waiting for anything to begin or to end. your shoulders. You find them without moving, simply by turning your attention there, and they are softer than you expected, or softer than you remembered leaving them. Because at some point in the last few minutes, they have released something they were holding since the gangway, since the corridor, since the particular small effort of lifting your bag and placing it on the shelf. And now the left shoulder blade is flat against the mattress, and the right is flat against the mattress, and the space between them is warm and still. And the jaw, you find it too. The muscles at the hinge of it, which had been holding something, a faint contraction, the ghost of an expression or a thought, and now they are still, and the teeth are not pressed together, and the tongue rests softly behind the lower teeth, and the lips are just barely parted, just enough for the breath to move through without effort. And finally the eyes, the muscles around them, which are very small and very tired, going still now, one by one, the brow smoothing, the lids heavy and dark and warm behind them, the long darkness of the bunk, and the rain goes on, and the engine hums beneath it, and you are warm, and you are still. Chapter 10. Rain on the hull. Each drop arrives separately. That is what you notice first, or what you return to noticing, that the rain is not a single sound but many sounds, each one its own small event, a tap, a whisper, a brief metallic note against the steel of the hull just beyond your ear, and between each one a moment of quiet, and then the next one comes, and then the next, patient and unhurried, as if the sky has all the time in the world to deliver each drop individually, without rushing toward the next. You do not count them. You let them arrive without counting, and they make together a sound that is almost interior, almost like something happening inside rather than outside, like a soft pressure along the side of your face, like fingers resting very lightly somewhere just beside you in the dark, present, consistent, requiring nothing. You breathe in, slowly, and the chest expands, and the abdomen lifts, and the blanket rises, and the cool air touches the edge of your collarbone, and you hold it for a moment, just a moment, the way the bow holds at its height, and then you release, slowly. And the blanket settles, and the warmth returns, and the rain goes on through the quiet of the outbreath, as steady and patient as before. Svolvær is many miles behind you now. You do not need to calculate how many. The number does not matter, only the distance, which is real and growing, the harbour lights long since absorbed by the dark water, and the distance, the smell of the fish warehouses and the wooden pier already thinning from memory, already becoming the kind of thing that belongs to a different time, the earlier part of a day that is now very nearly finished. You breathe in, and the rain taps at the hull, and you breathe out. You had been counting things. At some point this evening, the hours, the miles, the lights of passing islands, the intervals between the swells, but now you have set that down somewhere, and you are not sure where, and it does not seem important to find it. The counting has simply stopped, the way the lights of a town stop when you have driven far enough away. Not all at once, but gradually, one by one, until there are none. Breathe in. The rain finds the hull at a slightly different angle now, or perhaps the ship has turned slightly, and the sound shifts, becomes a degree quieter, becomes something closer to the sound of breath on fabric, of weight settling, of the long, slow absorption of a body into sleep, and you do not resist it. You do not reach toward it either, because reaching would be a kind of wakefulness, and what you are doing now is different, softer, more like sinking than arriving. Breathe out. The engine hums on beneath everything, beneath the rain, beneath the swell, beneath your breathing. One long note that has no beginning. You can remember, and no end you can imagine. And the hull holds the cold water on the other side of it, and the water holds the ship, and the ship holds the bunk, and the bunk holds you, and you are very warm, and the rain goes on, and the breath goes slowly in, and slowly out, and the harbour is very far away now, and the dark is complete, and there is only the sound of the rain and the hum and your breathing slowly. Chapter 11. The Long Swell. The sea has found its rhythm now, or perhaps you have found the sea's rhythm. The way you sometimes find the rhythm of your own breathing after a long and quiet time, not by looking for it, but by letting go of looking, and discovering it was already there, already underneath you, already carrying you through the dark. The swell comes at longer intervals now. Or perhaps it only feels that way. The motion has grown so gradual, so unhurried, that each rise and fall seems to take the whole of its time, a slow gathering beneath the hull, a long and patient lifting, and then a pause at the very crest of it, a held breath, a moment where the weight of you and the weight of the ship and the weight of the dark water all balance together for an instant, and then the long release, the descent, the gentle return into the trough, and the stillness that waits before the next one begins. Up and pause and down. The wool blanket is warm against your arms. The bunk holds you from beneath with the same patient solidity it has held you all this time. The same ribbed grain of the wood at your shoulder. The same slight give of the mattress where it has taken the shape of you. And the ship moves under you in that long, unhurried way. The swell lifting everything at once, everything together, and then releasing up and pause and down. There is a warmth that begins at the soles of your feet now. A gentle, golden warmth, slow in the way that the swell is slow, unhurried in the way that the rain is unhurried, moving upward through the arches of your feet and into your heels, into the thick warmth of your calves lying heavy against the mattress, not rushing, only flowing, the way warmth does when you have been still long enough for it to find you, up through your knees, up along the long bones of your thighs where they press into the bedding, where the wool of the blanket rests across them, heavy and warm and real. The rain keeps on. A patient sound against the porthole glass, against the deck somewhere above you. You have stopped hearing it as something separate from the hum, or from the motion of the ship, or from the long pull of the swell. It has become one thing, one surrounding quality, the substance of being here, in this bunk, in this warmth, in this unhurried dark, up and pause and down. The warmth has moved into your hips now, has settled into the hollow of your lower back where the mattress meets you, has spread across your belly with a slow and easy weight. Your chest is warm where the blanket lies across it. Your shoulders are warm against the pillow. The warmth moves upward through your throat, into your jaw where you have let it loosen, into your cheeks, the skin around your eyes, soft and still, your forehead easing, all the way to the crown of your head, the very top of you, where it rests now like a hand laid gently there, warm and quiet and complete. The swell lifts the ship, holds it, and releases it into the dark, and the rain goes on, and the warmth holds from your feet to the crown of your head, and you are very warm, and the sea is very slow, and there is nothing more the night requires of you. Chapter 12. Into the Night Sea. The porthole holds nothing now but black, rain and water and dark air, all one substance, all pressed together on the other side of the glass. The hum is there. The rain is there. The swell is there. The long, slow swell, lifting the ship in that unhurried way, carrying everything upward and holding it, briefly, in the quiet at the crest, and then releasing it, slowly, down into the dark. Your feet are warm, warm and heavy and still. Your calves are warm where they rest against the mattress. Your knees are still. Your thighs are heavy with the good weight of a body that has been fully at rest for a long time. the blanket lying across them in the dark. The warmth settled deep into the fabric of you. The engine hums somewhere below. A low and continuous sound that is part of the substance of things now. The way the rain is part of things, the way the warmth is part of things. The ship lifts. Your hands rest open on the bedding. Your belly rises slowly with your breath and falls slowly with your breath. And somewhere to the north, the trawler moves through water you have not seen and will not see tonight, through the long Norwegian dark that stretches in all directions without end. And there is nothing in it but the rain and the hull and the warmth of you, here, held by the bunk, held by the ship, held by the water. Your chest rises, slowly, and falls. Your shoulders are warm against the pillow. The pillow is soft and close and carries the faint salt wool scent of a bunk that has been slept in for many nights. The warmth is everywhere in you now. It has nowhere left to go. It simply rests from the soles of your feet to the crown of your head. A long and golden stillness inside the dark. The swell lifts, holds, and releases. Your face is still. The muscles around your eyes have gone far away. Your forehead is smooth. The warmth rests there, at the very top of you. The same warmth that began at your feet and moved through all of you slowly. The way the ship moves, the way the swell moves, the way the night moves. The porthole holds nothing but black, rain, the hum, the dark. The swell lifts the ship and holds it and lets it go. And your breathing goes on in the same slow and patient way, asking nothing of you, expecting nothing of you, moving as the sea moves, as the rain moves, as the long Norwegian night moves, on and on and on, without any need of you to keep it going. Only the warmth now, the hum, the dark, the rain going on, and the breath in and out, slowly in and out. And so, the rhythm of the sea becomes the rhythm of your own breathing, steady and deep, carrying you softly away from the lower bunk. The warmth lingers for a moment, a gentle anchor, before slowly fading into the cool, comforting air of the cabin. You feel yourself drifting, weightless, as if lifted by the same quiet current that moves the water outside. And when you open your eyes, though you hardly realize you've closed them, you are elsewhere. You find yourself settled onto the padded bench seat along the galley bulkhead, just aft of the wheelhouse ladder. You are wrapped in a blanket that smells faintly of oilskin and old timber, holding you secure in the stillness. Before you, a row of small square windows frames the world outside. You watch, half asleep, as the bow rises and falls against a rain-white sky and an ink-black sea. Rain traces slow, silver paths against the forward windows, each drop a tiny secret whispered by the night, guiding your mind deeper into rest. Chapter 1. Coming below. You have come down the companionway steps, one hand on the cold brass rail, the other trailing the edge of the hatch as you lower it closed above you, and the night seals itself away. The galley is dim, lit only by the amber glow of a single overhead bulb that sways gently with the rocking of the boat at her mooring. And you pause at the base of the steps while your eyes adjust, and your body remembers what stillness feels like after hours standing on deck in moving air. The cold has followed you down inside your jacket and your collar and the ends of your hair, and with it comes the smell you have been breathing without noticing all evening. Salt air first, mineral and clean, and underneath it something richer and more particular, oil skin and diesel and old rope, the layered scent of a working boat that has gone out many times and come back honest and close, and somehow exactly right for this hour. The padded bench runs along the port bulkhead, a long narrow seat cushioned in faded green vinyl, and you move toward it the way you move toward familiar things, without deciding, simply following the pull of it. You sit, and the vinyl gives slightly beneath you, cool at first against the backs of your thighs, and you reach for the blanket bunched in the corner of the bench. It is wool, thick and slightly rough at the edges, carrying in its weave the faint ghost of oilskin from the hands that have used it before you, and you draw it over your legs and tuck the edge beneath your thighs and feel its weight settle across you slowly, the way settled things settle, fully, without hurry, like something that has been waiting in exactly that position to be of use. The stove at the other end of the galley gave up its cooking heat an hour ago, but the residual warmth still hangs in the low space, resting against your cheeks and the backs of your hands, softening the air around your shoulders. You feel the difference between the cold still releasing from your jacket and the warmth the galley is quietly giving back, and the two meet somewhere at your collar, somewhere at your wrists, and the cold slowly begins to lose ground. It retreats from your shoulders first, then from your forearms, then from the tips of your fingers as you fold them beneath the edge of the blanket. On the table in front of you sits a cup of tea. Someone made it before the passage began and left it for this moment, and it has moved past drinking hot into something better. Just warm, the ceramic smooth and faintly grainy at the rim, and when you wrap both hands around it, you feel the heat move from the glaze into your palms in a long, even transfer. You hold it without lifting it. You don't need to drink it. The warmth is enough, spreading from the cup into your hands and from your hands slowly upward through your wrists, and you let it move where it wants to go. Through the two small square windows set into the forward bulkhead, the harbour mouth is still visible. The lights reflect in the black water between the pier heads and slow swaying columns, moving with the same long rhythm as the boat beneath you. And you watch them without needing them to do anything, without needing anything at all. Small, warm lights in the dark, growing slowly farther, growing slowly smaller, as the mooring line begins at last to ease, and the current takes you gently outward. The engine hums through the floor at idle, a low, even pulse you feel more in your spine than in your ears, steady and unhurried as the breath you are already beginning to lengthen. Your hands are warm around the cup. The blanket holds. The harbour lights drift and grow a little smaller still. Chapter 2. The First Lift. The breakwater passes the port window, a low stone wall trailing dark weed at the waterline, and then it is behind you, and the open sea takes the bow. You feel it before you see anything. A long, slow elevation, the whole hull rising beneath you as the first ocean swell moves underneath, lifting the bow first, tilting the galley floor by a degree or two, until the table edges gently toward you, and the cup shifts in your hands, and then the crest passes and the bow descends again, settling back through the same long arc in reverse, a drawn-out shudder that travels from the keel up through the hull and into the bench beneath you, carrying you slowly down. Your body braces without asking permission. The muscles along your thighs and lower back tighten for a half-second, old instinct, old caution, and then the crest has passed and the hull is still again, and your body, recognizing the pattern, releases. You feel it go. The tightness moves out of your thighs and flows down through your calves and out through the soles of your feet, and what remains is something softer, a readiness without tension, a kind of listening ease that costs nothing at all to hold. The rain begins while the bow is still descending from the first lift. Single drops, arriving without announcement on the glass of the forward windows, each one distinct. The dim galley light catches each drop as it lands, a brief bead of brightness, round and clear, clinging to the glass for a moment before the slow slide begins. You watch the first few this way, as individual things, each with its own brief bright life on the glass, each one finding its own path downward through the salt-marked surface. Then more arrive, and more, and the window begins to streak, the clear beads merging into lines, and the amber pier lights that were still faintly visible through the glass dissolve into long smears of warm color, pulling downward with each new drop, until the view through the windows is not a view at all, but a kind of painting. And the yay black and the moving lines of rain, everything softened and diffused. Beautiful in the way that obscured things can be beautiful. The way the world seen through rain is always more restful than the world seen plainly. A loose object somewhere forward rolls with the next swell. Something small, a tin or a fastener, tapping once against the hull and going still. The teacup shifts a centimeter on the table, and you steady it with one hand without looking, the gesture easy and unhurried, and feel the warmth of the ceramic again as your palm flattens around it. The second swell is longer than the first, or perhaps it only seems so because your body is beginning to anticipate it. The slow rise beginning at the keel and moving upward through the frame of the boat, lifting your weight from the bench in a long, even press, that brief suspension at the top where the bow hangs a moment against the sky, and then the long descent and the shudder again through the hull and the settling. Your spine receives it. Your shoulders receive it. The blanket across your legs does not shift. You are learning what the sea is asking of you, and the learning is happening beneath thought, in the muscles and the breath and the easy weight of your hands around the warm cup. The rain draws itself across the forward windows in long translucent lines, one after another, each erasing the last. The galley hums its low, even hum. The bow lifts again and holds at the crest for just a moment and falls. Still in the fall from that last crest, you notice it without deciding to, the hull beginning its lean to starboard with a kind of patient inevitability, settling into the weight of the swell. 1, 2, 3, the lean deepens, slow and committed, the galley's warm light tilting almost imperceptibly against the dark of the forward windows. 4, 5, and here is the brief suspension at the far edge of the roll that still point where the boat considers the horizon, weighs it, finds it acceptable. 6, 7, and the slow, unhurried return, the coffee tin on the shelf, resettling with the faintest clink, the hum of the bilge pump dropping half a turn and rising again. You are counting without meaning to count. The number 7 arrives in your awareness the way a familiar song arrives, not as a discovery, but as a recognition, something that was always there waiting to be found. 7 seconds, as reliable as a clock, as unhurried as a tide. You feel the number settle into your chest like something that has been true for a long time. The rain, which had been arriving in scattered fits and bursts against the forward glass, begins to consolidate itself into something more purposeful. You hear it change, the individual drops losing their separateness, merging into a continuous hiss that fills the space above the galley's hum the way a second voice fills a room. Not louder exactly, but more present, more committed. The forward windows blur at the outer edges first, driven white water collecting in the corners and narrowing the visible world to a dark oval at the center, a frame of motion around a quieter core of sky and sea. The warmth inside the galley becomes something you can feel against your face, now that the sound of the rain has made the outside more apparent. The deckhead above you holds the heat in, and the padded bench beneath you holds your weight without complaint, and between these two steady things, the warm ceiling, the firm seat, you exist in a pocket the weather cannot reach. You hear the rain scoring the roof of the wheelhouse above. You hear it meeting the water around the hull in that continuous collective hiss, as though the sea were whispering something to itself in a language made entirely of consonants, patient and long. The trawler lifts. 1, 2, 3. You have stopped counting consciously, but the body knows. Your inner ear has accepted the rhythm, filed it somewhere below thought, and what was once a motion you had to track has become simply the way things are. The way a pendulum becomes invisible once you have understood it, the way a heartbeat disappears into the background of a room. 4, 5, and the galley's warm light holds steady even as the vessel leans, because the light comes from inside, from the fixtures bolted into the deckhead, and they go where the boat goes, so everything in here moves together and nothing moves relative to anything else. Only the windows shift, the oval of dark water and pale sky tilting slightly, the rain on the glass sliding briefly sideways, then righting itself as the hull returns. 6, 7. The bilge pump hums. The rain hisses its long continuous hiss. Your hands are around the mug, and the mug is warm, and your palms are warm, and the warmth moves through your fingers in a slow and unremarkable way, the way warmth always moves when there is nowhere it needs to be. The warmth stays with you as your gaze drifts forward, through the rain-streaked glass, to the bow, that dark wedge of steel that breaks the swells and sheds the water and has been it rises now, tracing the same arc it has traced through the last hour, lifting into the rain-pale sky with a deliberateness that feels almost contemplative, as though the bow itself is curious about what the top of each swell might offer, whether this one will be different from the last. It reaches the crest. There is a moment, barely a moment, a held breath, where the bow hangs at the top of its arc, and the whole trawler seems to pause with it, the hull level, the roll suspended, the rain falling straight down the forward glass instead of diagonally. And then the sea breathes it back in. The bow descends into the black water, and you watch the dark wedge lower itself below the visible line of the waves, and the water rises in a small white curl along the hull's sides, and the sound of it reaches you half a second later. A soft, continuous rushing, the sea sliding along the steel, receding back into the swell as the bow begins to climb again. The same arc. Again. Without variation, without hurry, without any interest in being different from itself. On the table in front of you, the cold tea in a mug describes a small wobbling circle with each roll, the surface tilting imperceptibly, the liquid finding its own level and then finding it again, a miniature record of the motion happening all around you. You watch it without watching it. Your eyes are soft on the bow's arc, and your peripheral vision holds the mug's slow wobble, and together they make a kind of clock, the large and distant motion, the small and near one, both keeping the same time without consulting each other. The sound of water along the hull comes and goes in the gaps between the rain. When a swell rolls under you, the rushing is there, low and continuous, something you feel through the bench as much as hear with your ears. A vibration in the padding, in the wood, in the soles of your feet resting flat against the deck. And then the water is past, and the rain reasserts itself, and the bilge pump resumes its steady note, and the galley settles back into its warm enclosed quiet, and the bow is already climbing again. You have stopped counting the seconds the way you stop counting your own breaths when you are falling asleep. Not because the counting was wrong, but because it is no longer necessary, because the body has absorbed the tempo and is keeping it without help. The rise and the crest and the slow descent into the dark water, the white curl along the hull, the rush that reaches you a half-second late, the settling, the rise. Your hands are heavier around the mug than they were a few minutes ago. Not uncomfortable, heavy the way hands become when they have found the right position and the muscles have quietly agreed to stop adjusting. The tea inside traces its small tilted circle. The bow describes its arc. The rain draws long translucent lines across the forward glass, one after another, each sliding into the next, the whole surface of the window in motion, and somehow, because of this, stiller than stillness. You watch it the way you might watch a fire, the motion itself becoming restful, the eyes softening into it, the need to follow any single line loosening its hold, letting go. The bow is rising now. You can see it through the rain-streaked glass, that dark patient wedge climbing into the pale sky, reaching the top, holding for just a moment, and beginning its long unhurried arc back down into the sea, Chapter 5. A warmth you do not need to move toward, only to know is there. The bench seat beneath you holds a familiar give now, the cushion shaped by the hours since you sat down. The way good seats will receive you over time, loosening their resistance, offering what they know of you back to you. You shift your weight just slightly, feeling the vinyl cool and then warm again against the backs of your legs, the galley table solid in front of you, your hands resting somewhere easy, on the table edge, or folded in your lap, or open, palms upward, a position that belongs to rest and nothing else. Above you, through the ceiling boards and the wheelhouse sole, you hear the helmsman's rubber boots shift weight. A slow, unhurried transfer from one foot to the other, a sound like the turning of a page, soft and without urgency. It comes every few minutes and never fails to arrive, and you find that you have been, without knowing it, half waiting for it each time, not with any anxiety but with the low, comfortable attention you might give a metronome, that settling feeling when the beat falls where it was always going to fall. The trawler is steered. There is nothing required of you. The crossing is fully underway now, and this is the thought that carries its own particular release. Somewhere behind you, the coast has receded entirely into rain and dark. Somewhere ahead, the far shore has not yet begun to appear. You are at the middle of it. Hours of open water already laid down beneath the keel. Hours of open water still to cross. And the trawler is alone in it, alone in the way that a ship has always been alone at sea, complete in itself, carrying everything it needs within its warm-lit interior, while the dark and the rain and the miles extend in every direction without limit or obstacle. There is a kind of sovereignty in it, a kind of peace that only arrives at distance from everything familiar, when the familiar has been replaced, not by the alarming, but by the vast and indifferent and still. Everything softened by it, held in it, as if the light itself was something you could breathe in slowly and let settle. The boots shift overhead again, left to right, settling, and the trawler lifts gently at the bow and comes gently down, and the rain continues its steady work against the glass, and you are here, in the middle of the crossing, in the middle of the dark, in the middle of the hours that belong to no one but the sea. The rain shifts, almost without your noticing, not the same rain it was a moment ago, arriving now in slower waves, layers you did not choose to follow but find yourself following. It arrives in layers, in waves you did not choose to track, but find yourself tracking, the way the mind will attach itself to a rhythm without being asked, finding pattern in what at first seemed only continuous. There is the hiss, the broad, deep hiss of a squall passing over, and then a softening, a drawing back, the sound thinning and thinning until the individual drops are audible again against the glass, each one distinct, each one landing in its own small percussive moment before the next sheet of rain sweeps in and covers them all in that general rush again. It is like breathing. Not your breathing, or not only yours, but something larger, something the night is doing on its own time, in its own unhurried rhythm, without reference to you. The squall thickens, holds, begins to ease, and in the quieter interval between, the drops against the window have a lighter sound, almost gentle, a sound that asks nothing of you, that falls the way snow falls in still air, each drop simply arriving where it was always going to arrive. You watch the glass. At the frame edges, where the cold of the outside presses closest against the warmth of the galley air within, a condensation has begun to form, a fine grey misting, faint as breath on a mirror, collecting in the corners of each pane where the rubber seal runs, the warmth and the cold meeting at that thin margin, and becoming something visible, something almost soft. The view through the center of the glass is still clear, the rain streaks crossing it in their long angled lines. But at the very edges, at the limits of the frame, the world outside softens and blurs into that grey mist, and the boundary between inside and outside is no longer sharp, no longer definite, but gradual. A slow transition from amber to dark, from warm to cool, from the contained life of the galley to the deep running black of the open sea beyond. You feel the temperature gradient without having to reach for it. The glass would be cold under your fingertips if you pressed them there. You know this without touching it, the way you know the temperature of rooms you have not yet entered. The air near the window carries a slight chill that the rest of the galley does not, a coolness that drifts from the glass the way cold drifts from ice, and you sit with it, the way you sit inside the crossing itself, held between the cold and the warm, between the dark outside and the amber within, between the rain and the shelter, each contained by the other, each made more itself by the presence of what it is not. The next squall arrives. A creak has an... You hear it before it reaches the windows. A deepening of the hiss out over the water, a gathering, and then it is here, running across the glass in long curtains, thickening the sound, the rain returning to its broad and general voice, and the individual drops are covered again, and the window darkens with it, the streaks multiplying and crossing. And through all of it the bow rises, as it has been rising all this time, and falls as it has been falling, patient and slow, the same long unhurried arc it has made since the harbour lights disappeared behind you. The squall eases. The hiss softens. The drops become audible again, lighter, singular, falling against the glass one at a time in their small patient way, and the condensation at the frame edges holds its soft grey bloom, and the amber light lays itself over everything evenly, and the boots shift once, overhead, and settle, and the rain comes and goes, swelling and softening like breath, like something the night has been doing all along without effort, without end. Chapter 7. The blanket higher. Your hand drifts up, slow and heavy as stone in water, to find the edge of the oilskin blanket where it rests against your knee, and you lift it, not with the quick jerk of a task, but with the lazy, fluid pull of sleep, drawing the thick, damp fabric over the curve of your shoulder, feeling the coarse, waxed weave slide against your skin like cool silk, warm from your own body heat, and then higher, over the slope of your neck, where the air is still and quiet, and you tuck the heavy fold into the hollow beneath your jaw, letting the weight of it sink down, deeper, anchoring you in the bunk, pressing you into the mattress, into the wood, into the rest. The blanket settles, heavy and dense, a cocoon of oilskin and wool and old sea air, holding you in, wrapping you in, closing you off from the room, from the light, from the world, leaving only the weight, the warmth, the smell, and the dark, and the smell rises up to meet you, faint and deep and salty, the scent of lanolin and wet canvas, and years of sleeping bags and salt spray, a smell that is not fresh nor stale but simply present, ancient and right and comforting, like a memory you haven't thought of in years but remember perfectly. And as you breathe in, you breathe out the day, you breathe out the noise, you breathe out the noise, you breathe out the need, and you are just a body, warm and still, under the heavy skin of the blanket, held by the sea. The hull rolls, a slow tidal shift, and you move with it, not because you are awake enough to correct it, but because you are asleep enough to let it, your hips sinking deeper into the bunk, your shoulders rolling with the gentle arc of the boat, port and starboard, a pendulum swing so slow it feels like standing, so slow it feels like floating, and the blanket flows with you, draping over your legs, pooling at your feet, lifting at your chest, a heavy tide of fabric moving in time with the tide outside, and there is no tension in the muscle, no alertness in the mind, only the rhythm, the long 7-second arc, up and down, in and out, a heartbeat of the ocean, a lullaby of wood and water. You are it. You are in it. You are it. In, as the boat lifts you gently toward the ceiling. Your lungs fill with the cool, still air of the bunk, air that has been waiting there for you, air that smells of wax and wool and sleep, and you take it in slowly, deeply, without thought, without intention, just letting the chest rise, just letting the ribs expand, just letting the head rest back against the pillow, just letting the eyes close, just letting the mind go blank, grey and soft and empty. And the boat climbs, and you climb with it, slow and steady, rising on the swell, rising on the breath, rising on the weight of the blanket. And then the pause, the stillness, the float, the silence, the crest, the moment where time holds its breath, where the water is flat and the sky is dark and the boat is weightless, and you are weightless, suspended in the warmth, suspended in the dark, suspended in the peace, and you rest there, in the pause, in the quiet, in the stillness, and you do not move, you do not breathe, you simply are, here, now, under the blanket, in the bunk, in the sea, in the sleep. Out, as the boat sinks back down into the deep. Your breath leaves you in a long, slow stream, warm and silent, drifting out into the dark, out into the sea, out into the night. And as it leaves, your body sinks, deeper into the bunk, deeper into the mattress, deeper into the wood, and the blanket settles with you, pressing down, pressing in, holding you close, holding you tight, holding you safe, and the ribs close, slowly, gently, softly, closing the chamber, closing the circle, closing the circle, closing the circle, closing the circle, closing the world, and the shoulders drop, draining all tension, dropping into the warmth, dropping into the weight, dropping into the rest, and the jaw goes slack, unhinged, loose, limp, and the face goes slack against the door. In with the rise. A gentle lift, a soft pull, a warm flow, and the air comes in again, cool and deep and still, filling the lungs, filling the chest, filling the body, and the boat rises, carrying you with it, carrying your weight, carrying your breath, carrying your peace, and you are light, you are float, you are drift, and the blanket is heavy, is warm, is deep, and the smell is salt, is wax, is sleep. Out with the descent, the long release, the slow exhale, the gentle fall, and the boat sinks into the water, into the rest, and your body follows, down into the bunk, into the wood, into the sleep, and the blanket pulls you closer, wrapping you in, and the warmth spreads through your limbs, through your skin, through your bones, through your skin, through your bones, and the silence grows deeper, darker, wider, and the night holds you in its arms, in its sleep, in its peace, and you are still, you are deep, and you are falling into the quiet, into the dark, into the sleep. The scent of the oilskin is everywhere, thick and sweet and heavy, coating your throat, coating your lungs, coating your mind, a fog of wax and salt and thyme, and you breathe it in, and you breathe it out, and you become it, and the rhythm continues, slow and steady, unbroken, unending, up and down, in and out, rise and fall, sleep and dream, and you are here. You are now, you are it, and you are gone, and you are here, and you are gone, and you are here, and you are gone. Chapter 8. What the hull says. The sound comes from deep in the boat. Low, resonant, unhurried. A long groan that moves through the hull from somewhere forward and travels the full length of the keel before it quiets. The way a tree sounds when the wind leans into it and the wood takes the weight and holds. You have heard it before, in the last hour, and the first time it caught some small thing at the edge of your attention, and the second time your attention had already let it go before the sound finished, and now it is simply part of the vocabulary of this crossing, part of what the trawler says when it is working. Aye. The hull answers, a flex along the starboard bulkhead. You feel it as a faint giving in the planks behind your shoulder blades, not a loosening but a living quality. The wood moving the way any structure moves when stress is honest and distributed across many points at once. The bulkhead is warm there, warm through the layers of clothing and the fold of the blanket, a warmth that has been building since you settled against it, the boat sharing what heat the engine room and the living of the vessel have accumulated, offered through the partition without ceremony. Rain on the coach roof. A different sound from rain on the windows. On the windows it is intimate, percussive, individual drops catching the light and spreading in their small, slow way. On the metal above, it is continuous and hollow, a sound like weather described from inside, a drumming that is not alarming but simply large, the sky going about its business directly overhead while you remain below, sheltered, horizontal, the distance between you and the rain exactly the thickness of painted steel. The hull groans again, forward. And somewhere in the hearing of it, your shoulders release. You hadn't known they were held, that particular quiet bracing the body does, against unfamiliar motion, against the sounds it hasn't yet catalogued as safe. But the holding has been there, using nothing you could feel but using something nonetheless. And now it stops. The rounds of your shoulders drop a fraction, and the blanket follows them down, and the weight of it rests differently, more fully, across a surface that has made itself available. Your jaw unclenches. The muscles along your temples, held against you without your permission, soften and let go. The slight tension that lives between the hinge of the jaw and the ear, the one that arrives when the body is listening for something to answer, stops listening. There is nothing here that requires an answer. The hull speaks its working language, and you hear it, and you do not need to respond. This too, a letting go you didn't know was a holding. The arms heavier now, heavier in the way that means the muscles have stopped offering themselves and are simply resting. Resting in the oilskin blanket's hold, in the curve of the bench, in gravity, in the long patient fact of a body that has decided it is safe to be still. The ship takes the beam's sea. The bulkhead holds its warmth against your back, slow and even, pressing gently through your shoulder blades, and your spine settles deeper into the curve of the bench, and your hips are heavy, and your legs are heavy beneath the wool, and the rain names itself against the coach roof. A long, steady narration that asks nothing of you, explains nothing, simply reports what the sky is doing from moment to moment. The boat going about its business around you, enormous and methodical and entirely unhurried, and your shoulders down and your jaw soft, and the warmth of the bulkhead at your back steady and unchanged, and you settling deeper into all of it, slowly, slowly, slowly. Chapter 9. Cold at the seals. There is a thread of cold, just a thread, fine as a pulled seam, seeping in at the edge of the window frame, and it finds your cheek with the temperature of the outside world, just enough to remind you that the night is still out there, still cold, still dark and raining against the hull. But that reminder is all it carries, nothing more than a touch, a thin, cool conversation between the glass and your skin that asks nothing of you and means nothing beyond itself. You notice the cold the way you might notice a draft beneath a door in a room where everything else is warm, not as a problem, not as something to correct, only as information the world is offering without urgency, the outside temperature, the fact of the rain, the fact that the night is continuing its own long business beyond the forward windows, indifferent and ongoing, and against that single thread of coolness, the rest of you is entirely warm. A warmth that begins somewhere beneath you, somewhere in the wood and the fiberglass and the iron of the engine still ticking faintly as it cools, its vibration traveling up through the bench and into your back like something almost audible, a low frequency you feel more than hear. And the warmth moves with it, upward through the small of your back, spreading across your shoulder blades, following the lines of your spine the way heat moves through stone after a long afternoon in the sun. Your shoulders have found the bulkhead, and the bulkhead is holding them solidly, with the slight give of the boat's living movement. And you feel the warmth there too, in the backs of your arms, in the places where your body meets the bench, the gentle insistence of the cushion against your thighs and your calves and the weight of your legs, all of it supported, all of it held by the structure of the boat and the boat held by the water. The cold thread touches your cheek again, and you are aware of it without minding it. Aware the way you are aware of a sound that has been present long enough to belong to the scene, the rain belonging to the night, the cold belonging to the glass, and all of it together composing the particular atmosphere of this hour, this berth, this long and unhurried crossing. The warmth moves through your feet now, settling into the soles where they rest against the lee side of the bench, the slight pressure there, the slight resistance of the cushion, and the warmth gathering in all the held places, your ankles and the backs of your knees and the long muscles of your thighs, softening, releasing something you hadn't known you were still carrying. And your chest, simply rising and falling, slowly, slowly. The same chest that has risen and fallen through all the hours behind you. The same breath, the same rhythm, and the rain maintaining its own rhythm against the forward windows, and the engine vibration moving steadily up through the bench, and the cold thread at your cheek. All of these things existing together in a coherence that asks nothing of you, explains nothing, simply continues. Your eyelids have a weight to them now, a pleasant heaviness, like something placed there gently and with care, and the cold at the window and the warmth beneath you are simply two facts belonging to the same scene, two notes in the same low chord, and you rest between them, entirely held, entirely warm where it matters, slowly warm where it matters. And the bench is wide enough for all of this, and the night continues its business beyond the glass, slowly. The bow has been rising and falling through all the hours behind you, steady as breath, tracing the same arc through the rain-streaked glass, and falls, you can see it through the rain-streaked glass, the same arc it has traced through all the hours behind you, but you are no longer reading it the way you read things you need to understand. You have stopped translating it into information, and now it is simply motion, the way a flame becomes simply light when you stop trying to understand what it is burning. The bow rises and falls, and you watch it without watching it, your gaze resting on the forward glass without pressing into it, without requiring anything of the image. Dark against pale, the dark shape of the bow against the pale wash of the rain light, the water light, the general luminance of a night that is not quite dark and not quite anything else. And the shape moves and you follow it without deciding to follow it. There is something that happens when watching becomes receiving, when the eyes soften and the scene comes to you instead of you reaching toward the scene. And it is happening now, slowly, the glass doing the work, the rain doing the work, the bow doing the work of rising and falling through its long cycle, and you simply present to it your weight in the bench, your back against the bulkhead, your breath unhurried and soft. Somewhere between one descent of the bow and the next you lose a moment. A small absence, like a word skipped in a long sentence that you only notice afterward, and you cannot say what was in that moment, cannot account for it, only that it was there and then it was not, and the bow is still rising and falling, and the rain is still reporting against the glass, and everything continues exactly as it was. A warm stillness has settled behind your eyes. Not darkness exactly, not sleep exactly. Something that exists in the distance between them. A warmth with no source you can name, that simply belongs to the space behind your closed eyelids, gathering there slowly, deepening without hurry. The 7-second roll lifts you now, and sets you down, lifts you and sets you down, and you move with it the way a wide, slow river moves with whatever has been resting in it long enough to belong there, long enough to have stopped being a separate thing, without resistance, without arrival, simply carried by the long, slow shape of the water. The bow rises, and the pale rain light shifts across the glass, and you register only the general shape of it, dark against pale, the general arc. And then between one breath and the next you lose another moment, a little longer this time, a little quieter, a little further from the surface of things, and the warmth behind your eyes is spreading now. Slowly, the way warmth moves through a room when the fire has been going for a long time, not an event, not a change, only a slow accumulation of something that was always going to arrive. The bow still moves. You can feel it in the roll, in the gentle shift of your weight against the bench. You do not need to see it. You carry it now in the structure of the crossing, in the 7-second interval, in the long rhythm that has been carrying you for hours without asking anything in return. Slowly, the bow rises, slowly, and you are here, and the rain continues its long narration against the glass. And the warmth is very still now, very deep. And the space between one moment and the next is widening and widening, and somewhere in that space the crossing goes on without you, patient and unhurried, exactly as it should. Chapter 11. The sound of rain arriving in long, even rushes across the forward panes, rising to a soft, sustained hiss, and then thinning out and then rising once more, patient as the swell beneath you, patient as the 7-second interval that has been carrying you through the dark for hours. The engine is below you and around you, more a feeling now than a sound. A low continuous warmth that rises through the deck and into the bench seat beneath you, into the backs of your thighs and the soles of your feet, a single sustained note that the wood and the metal are holding together without effort. And you feel it the way you feel your own heartbeat when you grow still enough to notice it, not heard so much as sensed, a presence in the structure of the boat that has been there all along and requires nothing of you to continue. A hull frame takes a swell at a particular angle, and you hear the long, deep creak of it, something in the structure settling, adjusting, finding its new position in the water. And then the creak is finished, and the rain comes again across the glass in its long, even rush, and then thins again, and the engine's single note is what remains, low and constant, and then another creak further forward as the hull adjusts, smaller this time, and then quiet, and then rain. You breathe in slowly, and the bow is rising. You feel the lift of it through the bench, through the warmth that has gathered in your thighs, through the soles of your feet flat against the deck. A long, gradual ascent that takes several seconds and asks nothing of you. And at the top of the arc there is a moment, brief and complete, where the bow balances between the rising and the falling, and you breathe out, slowly, as the bow descends, the long fall back through the dark water, the engine unchanged and unhurried through all of it, holding its note. The rain sweeps across the windows once more. A rush of sound, long and even, and then gone, and in the quiet that follows you can feel the engine's warmth more clearly, the way it has moved up through the deck, and into the bench and into your legs, settling there now like something that belongs to you, like a warmth you were always going to arrive at. And the hull takes the next swell with its familiar creak and settles, and you breathe in with the bow and breathe out with the fall, and the rain comes again. These sounds do not ask anything of you. The rain arrives and dissolves without needing you to note it. The engine holds its note without needing your attention to continue. The hull takes each swell and creaks and settles without needing your acknowledgement. You have given your eyes to the dark, and the dark has received them. And what remains is only the sound of rain on glass and the warmth of the engine rising through the wood and the long, unhurried motion of the swell carrying you through the night. In the bow rising, the warmth in your legs steady and deep, in and gently holding at the crest, out, the long fall, the rain beginning its long approach across the glass, in, slowly, the bow finding its way up through the dark once more, out, slowly. the rain arriving and passing, and the engine below you constant and warm, and the hull taking the swell and settling, and the bench holding you, and the crossing holding, all of it. And you breathing, simply breathing in the middle of all of it. And somewhere beyond the dark, on the forward windows, rain is still falling. You do not need to see it to know. You can hear it arriving in long, quiet rushes. You do not need to see it to know. You can hear it arriving in long, quiet rushes and receding and arriving again, the same as it has been for hours, the same as it will be for hours more, the trawler moving through it on its long, unhurried course while you remain here in the warmth, inside the warmth, deeper inside it now than you were a few minutes ago. The 7-second roll continues, the bow lifting its long lift and pausing and falling its long fall, and you are inside the motion now, not being moved by it but part of it, the bench and you and the galley and the hull and the dark water, all rolling together in the same slow time the sea has been keeping since before you came aboard, and will keep long after the crossing is done. The engine is below you, its warmth spreading slowly up through the deck and into the bench and into your legs, and your legs have become the same temperature as the bench, and the bench has become the same temperature as the galley, and the galley has grown indistinguishable from wherever it is you are going, which is not a port, not a harbour with lights on the water, but something deeper and quieter than any of those things, somewhere the rain is only a sound heard through layers of warmth, and the engine is only a warmth felt through layers of wood. Breathe in, and the warmth moves with the breath, slowly through your chest, into your shoulders, and you breathe out, and the warmth remains. It does not leave with the breath, it settles in deeper, and breathe in again, and the warmth spreads further, up through your neck, into the back of your head, where it rests against whatever holds it, and the rain comes against the windows somewhere above you, somewhere on the surface where the trawler is still moving, and you breathe out. The bow lifts somewhere above you, far above you now. The rain on the glass far above, the engine turning in the dark water below everything, and here between those two things, only warmth and depth, and the long slow interval between one breath and the next, which is widening now, the interval widening the way space opens between two stars when you let your eyes go soft and still. Breathe in. The warmth moving through you like something very gentle and very unhurried. Breathe out. The galley warm around you, the bench warm beneath you, the crossing continuing somewhere above in the rain and the dark. Breathe in, slowly, slowly. The bow far above lifting into the rain, white sky you are no longer watching. The engine turning in the water you are no longer feeling. Everything continuing exactly as it should without you. The whole long crossing patient and steady and carrying you forward into something that is not quite sleep and not quite the galley and not quite the dark, but all of them together, all at once, layer within layer, warm within warm, warm. Breathe out slowly. The warmth in you completely now, the rain arriving on the windows somewhere above, patient as it has always been, patient as the crossing, patient as the long interval between one breath and the next, which is where you are, very warm, very still, the bow lifting once more into a sky you have already left behind. The rain falling on a deck you are no longer on, the engine's notes spreading out through the water, and the dark and the deep quiet that has no edges, and the crossing goes on without you, as it was always going to. The rain's rhythm softens, blurring the line between the sea's endless murmur and the quiet space just behind your eyelids. The image of the lifting bow fades, becoming a distant memory rather than a present reality. You feel yourself drifting downward, heavier, warmer, the cool salt air of the deck giving way to the familiar heavy scent of wool and canvas. And when you open your eyes, you are no longer on the deck, you are back in the bunk. The canvas curtain is drawn tight against the night, enclosing you in a pocket of deep velvet stillness. The wool blanket is pulled up to your chin, holding in your own warmth. Outside the small porthole, there is only rain-streaked steel. Grey nothing, a soft, blurred darkness that presses gently against the glass. Somewhere to starboard, invisible in the cloud and rain, the sheer black cliffs of the Lofoten archipelago pass by at 4 knots, moving slowly, steadily, carrying you deeper into the quiet dark. The world shrinks to this small, safe space, this breathing, sleeping hull. Chapter 1. And then beneath it, the cold thread of metal, the faint petroleum ghost of diesel that lives in the walls of every working vessel, and something else, something that takes a moment to name, salt, not sharp or ocean fresh, but older than that. The salt of sea air that has settled and softened into wood and steel over many crossings. You know this smell. Your body knows it without needing to think. The corridor narrows around you as you move aft, your shoulder brushing the painted steel on one side, the familiar give of the opposite wall where the old insulation bows slightly outward beneath your palm. Your hand finds the handhold without looking. Your palm knows the shape of it, the slight roughness of it, the particular temperature of steel that has been warmed and recooled many times over by the heat of passing bodies. You do not need light. You do not need instructions. The corridor delivers you to the bunk as if the ship itself is doing the carrying. The curtain is not yet drawn. You see it waiting, a rectangle of dimness beyond the narrow threshold, the bunk a low, familiar shape in the grey dark that comes through the porthole. Rain on the glass. You hear it now as a continuous soft percussion, not a drumming, but something closer to the sound of something being continuously smoothed, continuously eased. Water finding its way down the outside of cold steel, tracing paths that have been traced many times before, tracing them again now with a patience that has no beginning and no end. The porthole shows nothing. Wool thick and slightly rough under the pads of your fingers, not scratchy, not unpleasant, but present. Substantially present in the way that only natural things are. This is not the neutral softness of something designed not to be felt. This is a material that knows it is a material. You run your thumb along the folded edge of it. Once, slowly, feeling the weave of it, the individual threads compressed together into something dense and warm and waiting. The pillow holds the impression of your head. You see it even in the grey dark, the shallow bowl of it, the shape of a head that left it hours ago and that the pillow has kept faithfully all this time. It has not flattened. It has not forgotten. There is something in this that settles quietly in the chest. Not sentiment exactly, but recognition. The simple recognition of a thing that has been waiting for you to return to it. You ease yourself down. The sounds from the corridor, the occasional creak of footsteps, the faint clink of something settling in the galley behind you. All of that begins already to fall back. The pillow receives the weight of your head. Your hand rests near your face against the cool edge of the wool. The rain continues against the porthole glass, unhurried and reliable, the same as it was a moment ago, and the same as it will be long after your eyes have closed. Your body knows what to do. It has always known what to do with this bunk, this pillow, this particular grey-dark quiet. You are already, in some small but certain way, returning to something that was never entirely left. The curtain is there, waiting. Slowly, without urgency, you reach out and draw it across, the rings sliding along the short rail with a soft, muted sound, a whispered hiss of metal on metal, The rings slide along the short rail with a soft, muted sound, a whispered hiss of metal on metal, and then stillness. The corridor beyond dims to a murmur. Not silence, not yet. The sounds are still there, the low, ongoing conversation of a ship at sea, but they have changed their quality. They have become something that belongs to another world, the world on the other side of a thin curtain, a world you have temporarily and completely set aside. The bunk is its own world now, small and exactly sufficient. The ceiling close above you, the walls close on either side, the wool blanket pulled up to your chin so that the edge of it rests just against your jaw. Soft, just barely rough, warming already from the heat your body has begun to give it. You feel the mattress beneath you accepting the full weight of a body that no longer needs to hold itself upright. There is nothing to brace against. There is nowhere to be carried. The mattress yields in the particular way that only a known mattress yields, accommodating the familiar weight of you with a kind of slow patience, an easy downward give that continues for a long moment after you stop settling, and then stops, and is still, and holds you. You have already adjusted to this. Your body has already made the small, continuous adjustments it makes without asking, the slight shift, the tiny muscular responses to the vessel's movement through water. You are not aware of adjusting. You are only aware now of the wool against your chin and cheek, the slight roughness of it warming slowly to your skin's warmth, the weight of the blanket across your chest and legs not heavy but present, substantial and steady in the way that a hand resting on a shoulder is substantial and steady. Beneath everything else, the engine note, low and constant and omnipresent. Not a sound you hear so much as a sound you feel, a vibration that travels through the steel of the hull, through the frame of the bunk, up through the mattress and into the long bones of your back. It has been there since you came aboard. It will be there when you wake. It is the heartbeat of this vessel, slow and regular and unhurried, and it has folded itself into the background of everything the way that familiar sounds fold themselves away, until they are no longer a distraction but a presence, no longer an interruption but a kind of company, low and steady and warm in its constancy. The rain continues at the porthole glass, softened now, absorbed by the steel, reduced to the faintest possible percussion, not rain exactly from here, but the idea of rain, the memory of a sound, something your body knows is there even as the curtain has muffled it to almost nothing. The glass holds the grey dark, the Lofoten wall somewhere out there to starboard, somewhere in the dark and the rain, unreachable and irrelevant and vast in its unreachability. And here, this berth, this wool, this slow and steady sway. The world has been reduced and made sufficient. The wool warming fiber by fiber to the exact temperature of your skin. The engine note beneath everything, steady and low and constant. Rain against steel, far away and further. The mattress holding all of you without effort, without condition, without end. Your hand rests near your cheek against the pillow, cool at the edges where your warmth has not yet reached, and you feel even this small difference, cool linen, warm linen, the slow and patient equalization, as the cold yields softly to the warmth you bring. As this small world becomes entirely yours, entirely known, entirely enough. Chapter 3. The sway. The roll begins so gradually you might not notice it as motion at all, only as a slow shift in the weight of your body against the mattress, a gentle redistribution, as if something vast and patient beneath you has drawn a long breath and is leaning quietly to port. And you feel it not in your inner ear but in your shoulder, in the side of your hip where the mattress presses fractionally more firmly and then fractionally less as the ship finds the crest of the swell and holds there a moment suspended, the roll easing but not yet returning. And in that held moment, the engine's note seems to drop a register, as if the whole vessel is pausing to consider, before the long, slow lean begins again in the other direction, the return equally measured, equally unhurried. You have been lying here long enough that the motion has become familiar without becoming less present. It is simply part of what this place is now, part of the texture of being here, this bunk, this curtain, this particular dark. The same way a body becomes familiar with the pulse of a room, with the draft from a window, with the settling sounds of a house late at night. You do not think about the roll, you only receive it, somewhere to starboard. Though the word somewhere carries more geography than you presently need, the Lofoten wall is passing. You cannot see it. There are no lights. There is only cloud and rain and the dark water lifting and falling, and somewhere within that dark, sheer basalt rising hundreds of meters directly from the sea, straight and enormous and old in ways that precede any measure you might apply to oldness. You do not need to see it. You feel it, perhaps, as a kind of gravity, as a mass that does not announce itself but is simply present, the way a mountain is present at your back on a clear day even before you turn to look. Something solid in all this moving water. The hull speaks in small, continuous ways. Amidships, where the sea meets the steel at roughly the level of your bunk, there is a constant low register. Not quite a knock, not quite a rush, something between pressure and sound, a language of contact, the water pressing and the hull yielding by exactly the degree that steel and salt have negotiated between themselves over years and passages and weather, and then the water releasing and the hull returning. And this too is patient conversation, this too is ongoing and unhurried. The mattress tilts very slowly beneath you now, a degree or two toward the port side, and you feel the familiar heaviness of your own body shift against it, your shoulder pressing gently into the thin bolster, your elbow finding a new angle, and then the crest, the held moment, the stillness that is not stillness, but is something between the going and the returning, and then the long glide back, and your body finding itself again without effort, weight redistributing the way water finds its level, quiet and without decision. The engine throbs below you, low and steady, below the register you count as sound, and more in the range of what a body simply knows, a pulse, distant, the ship's own heartbeat, patient, continuous, carrying you through the dark water past the invisible wall, past the sheer rock and the cold, toward wherever the morning will be, when morning comes. Chapter 4. Radar turning, somewhere above. You could not say exactly where. The radar antenna completes another slow circuit. You hear it not as a sound precisely, but as a faint mechanical presence, a patient turning, a small steady motor doing its quiet work against all the larger sounds of weather and water and engine. The soft whir of it arriving in the periphery of your awareness, and then completing and then arriving again, unhurried, methodical, and sending its invisible pulse out into the cloud and rain and receiving back the answer. Cliffs there, water here, the passage clear, and you know none of this consciously, only that somewhere above you something is watching, in its way, so that you do not need to. The rain varies in intensity with something you cannot quite locate. A change in the wind, a different face of the swell, the ship's heading relative to the weather, and you hear it shift from a light, even percussion against the porthole glass to something fuller and more complex, as if the rain itself has a weather within it, and then lighter again, and steady, and the curtain hanging almost still against the bunk rail. A gust finds the superstructure. You hear it arrive from forward, a low note building as it travels aft along the decks and around the corners of the bridge housing. A full deep sound that rises for a moment to something almost vocal before the Doppler fall begins, the note dropping as the gust moves past and away behind you, and then the quiet returning in its wake, softer than before, the rain re-establishing its patient tempo on the glass. The cliffs are in the sweep. The passage is known. The antenna turns and turns and turns. The rain and the engine and the water against the hull settle back into their long familiar chord, the one that has been playing since you first closed your eyes, the one you have perhaps already begun to dream within without knowing it. The gust gone, the curtain still, the antenna completing its slow and patient arc somewhere above, and you are here in this bunk, in this warm dark, in this moving ship, and the wall is to starboard in the rain, and none of it requires anything of you, and you breathe, and the mattress holds you, and the ship carries you on. Chapter 5. Rain through metal. Rain on a ship is not the rain you have known before. Not rain on windows, not rain on pavements, not the sharp percussion of drops on slate, or the soft rushing of it through leaves. This is something the steel hull has intercepted and transformed, caught in its thickness, and translated into something barely recognizable as weather at all. A quality of the ship itself, as though the vessel has always sounded this way, as though the rain is only revealing what was already there, already part of the structure you are resting inside. You lie still and you attend to it, and it seems to come from everywhere at once, arriving from no single surface or direction. It is in the deck above and the curve of the hull beside you, and somewhere below in the skeleton of the keel, where the sound has traveled down through the ribs of the ship and pooled, gathering. It enters the body not only through the ears, but through the skin, through the back of your shoulders, and the soft place between your shoulder blades where the mattress holds you, through the whole long, warm length of you settled in this bunk, this level and patient place, and then a wave meets the bow. You feel it before you properly hear it, a low and deliberate shudder traveling up through the frame, arriving in the springs of your mattress as a faint and measured tremor, something that moves upward through the bed for just a moment, briefly, the way a long breath pauses at its fullest before beginning to release. And then the wave has passed, and the ship settles and the tremor dissolves back into the general hum, and the rain goes on, unchanged, patient, the same low softened murmur it has been for some time now. This is how the ship converses with the sea. In no sharp language, not in spray or breaking crests, but slowly in pressures and vibrations that the hull catches and quiets before passing them inward. Through the steel, through insulation and foam and the warmth that surrounds the bunk, through all the layers of this small contained world, until what arrives in your body is only presence, even and rounded. A sound the body has already accepted as its own particular background, its own form of quiet. Your breath has slowed without your noticing, in and slowly out, the chest rising and easing in its own time, following no rhythm but its own. And the mattress holds you, and the springs carry the faint tremors of the sea, and the rain goes on through the metal above you, softened past all urgency, past all resemblance to anything that could require a response. Another wave arrives and moves through the ship, through the frame and through the berth and through the length of you, gentle, impersonal, complete in its passing, and releases, and the ship steadies, and the rain continues its slow work against the hull, patient and unhurried as breathing. The steel absorbs everything it touches. The weather and the dark and the cold weight of the water outside, and passes to you only this, a gathered, continuous murmur a warmth of sound that belongs nowhere and everywhere, presence without event, something the body has already decided to receive without needing to understand it. And your breath moves slowly in and slowly out, and the rain through the metal is already beginning to sound like something further in, something dimmer and warmer, the last sound before a sound you will not remember hearing. In and slowly out, tremor and release, rain and hum, and the breath moving on its own in the dark. Chapter 6. 4 knots. 4 knots through the dark, barely walking pace. The kind of speed a person moves at when they are in no hurry at all, when the evening stretches long and cool ahead, and there is nowhere that matters more than here. And the ship holds this pace, unhurried, its engines making no argument with the water, simply maintaining the same low note they have held for hours now, and will hold for hours more, a note so constant and so even it has long since ceased to be sound in any ordinary sense, and become instead a kind of warmth, a vibration you carry somewhere behind the sternum without thinking of it. The Lofoten wall is out there to starboard in the rain and the dark, the cliffs moving past at the pace of a slow evening walk, each great face of rock taking long, unhurried minutes to pass, its full width moving behind you before the next face begins in the dark ahead. And you cannot see it, and it does not matter that you cannot see it, the knowledge of it enough, the nearness of it, something you carry the way, the hull carries its engine note, steadily, without effort, without having to remind yourself to carry it. On each roll, the mattress tilts. Slowly, the whole weight of the bed shifting a fraction, and the body shifting with it, the hips and the shoulders making some small accommodation so slight it cannot really be called movement, more a yielding, a going with. And then the ship rolls back, and the mattress levels, and the body returns to where it was, without having decided to return, without having done anything at all, being moved slightly, and then being returned, and moved again, and returned again, in long and slow intervals that match nothing but themselves and ask nothing of you. The engine note is very low and very steady, felt more in the chest and the belly than heard through the ears, a resonance that passes through the bunk frame and through the springs and settles into the body like something absorbed, something that has been there long enough now to feel native. And beside it, just barely present, the long hiss of water running along the hull at this unhurried speed, the sound of moving through rather than against, the ship parting the dark water gently and letting it close behind without complaint. You breathe slowly, in and out and in again. And on each breath the body settles a little more completely into the mattress, the shoulders a little heavier, the hands a little warmer where they rest, and the mattress tilts and steadies and tilts once more in its long and patient way. The wall slides on in the dark out there, taking its time, its cliffs offering nothing and requiring nothing, its darkness total and indifferent and somehow restful in its indifference, and the ship takes its 4 knots without hurry, holding its heading, holding its low note, holding this warm berth around you in its frame of painted steel. And the body has made all the small adjustments it needs to make, and now simply goes with the motion, tilting a fraction and returning a fraction, the line between waking and sleep already difficult to locate, going without effort. Held and moving, the mattress tilting and settling and tilting again, the engine its one long note, the water its constant soft agreement along the hull, in and out, and the mattress tilts and holds and slowly, easily comes back, and you go with it, 4 knots through the dark, and the wall to starboard you cannot see, and the rain you can barely hear now, and the breath slow and even, and already the length of sleep. Chapter 7. The wool. The blanket is the heaviest thing, its weight across your chest exact and familiar, the way it drapes from your shoulders and folds across your hips, everything held and pressed and accounted for. You had not realized until now how much of you was still braced against the air, still slightly raised against nothing, still offering some small, unnecessary resistance to something that was no longer there. And the wool takes care of that. It presses you down gently with the authority of something that has been doing this for years. And there is warmth there too, gathered from hours, accumulated from your own body and held in the weave without being asked. Your shoulders release. You feel it happen. A small and unannounced giving up. The left shoulder first and then the right, both of them settling into the mattress a fraction deeper than they were. And you had not known they were still holding on, still carrying something, some last residual tension from the dock or the boarding or the handling of things. Some tightness so presented had become invisible. And now it goes. And the wool holds the place where they were. The warmth in the blanket is your own warmth returned to you. The wool gathered it over the hours you have been here and gave it back slowly, steadily, without ceremony, and now it presses into your sternum and across your collarbones and the flat of your chest, and asks nothing except that you stay, which you are already doing, which requires no decision at all. Your jaw is the last thing. It happens by itself, the unclenching, a slow release of pressure you had not catalogued, the back teeth separating by a fraction, the hinge of the jaw softening on both sides, and the air passes easily through the space that opens there, cool and unhurried. The pillow takes the full weight of the head. You can feel how it receives it, the way the filling shapes itself around the curve of your skull and holds without effort, requiring no adjustment, no search for the right position. This is already the right position, has been for some time, and the pillow knows it even if you have only just noticed. And the weight of your head is considerable. You feel it now, that heaviness that means the neck has finally given up its last small errand. The sounds outside are still there. The engine, patient and continuous. The water moving along the hull in its long, soft running commentary. The occasional creak from somewhere in the structure of the ship. The rain that has reduced itself to almost nothing. But they are far. They are the world outside the wool, and they require nothing from you. No interpretation, no response, just their presence out there in the dark while you remain here. Held and warm, your hands have stilled, somewhere below the blanket, loose and warm and unoccupied, your feet have stilled. And the mattress tilts, barely, slowly, 4 knots through the dark, and the blanket tilts with you, and the weight of it is constant through all of it. The weight of it, the warmth, the roughness where it meets your cheek, specific and known, and the shoulders deep in the mattress and the jaw loose. And the head, its full weight, in the pillow, receiving. Chapter 8. The body receives. The mattress shifts. Slow and gentle thing. The ship moving through the dark swell without urgency, and with each shift the pressure changes slightly beneath you, a little more weight borne on the left hip, held there a moment, then redistributing, easing, the right side receiving more and then less, the body rolling in long, slow fractions that require nothing, that happen to you rather than needing to be managed. And there is warmth beginning in the feet, not sudden, not startling, just a slow accumulation. The warmth the blanket has been holding finding its way downward and then rising, moving through the arches of the feet, settling into the heels where they press into the mattress, and then beginning, slowly, to climb. The calves receive it. You can feel the muscles there, where they lie against the sheet, beginning to take on warmth from below, the fibers of them quieting. No longer called on to hold or brace or prepare for anything. Just lying heavy against the mattress and receiving what comes without decision. It moves, unhurried. Through the backs of the knees where the tendons cross and the skin is thin, and the body is soft in its vulnerability. The warmth settles there and does not rush. and the ship tilts and receives your weight a little differently than before, and the warmth continues upward. Your hands have found their place, somewhere at the sides of the body, where they have been lying for some time now without your attention, and you notice this as if from a distance, the stillness of the hands, the loosening that has been happening without instruction, finger by finger, the last curl releasing, the palm opening slightly as though setting something down, as though what was held, whatever it was, whatever was still being carried, can be left here now, on the bunk, in the dark, while the ship continues north through the water. There was something in the hands, there often is, some grip or readiness brought forward from earlier, from the day and the deck and the handling of things, and it has been releasing for some time without you knowing, and now it is nearly gone, the palms open, soft, asking for nothing. The smell of the wool is close, old and clean, faintly animal, the smell of something made from warmth, and underneath it the cold of the metal walls, and underneath that the salt, faint and deep and constant, working through the steel from the water outside, the water that is everywhere outside, dark and deep and carrying you northward. The warmth has reached the knees now, is settling into the thighs, is finding the places where the body is heaviest and warmest already, and adding to them gently, without announcement. The mattress tilts, barely, almost not at all, holds a moment, tilts back, and you go with it. The body loose enough now to move with the ship rather than against it, to tip and return with the long, slow rhythm that has been going all this time, that will go on long after. There is nothing required of the hands, they lie where they have fallen. Loosening still, a little more, as if this is a process with no end you need to observe. The warmth in the legs, still moving slowly upward through the heavy body, while the ship tilts and the engine holds its one long note, and the salt works through the walls and the wool holds what it has gathered, and everything continues slowly in its own time, continuing. Chapter 9. It is the sound a ship makes in an open sea on a night with weather in it, and you have heard it now for hours, and it has become part of the texture of the dark, the way the engine has, the way the particular resonance of the hull meeting water has become something your body no longer marks as new. The radar overhead turns. You cannot see it, but you know its rhythm by now, a slow and patient rotation, measuring the dark, returning to measure it again, indifferent to whether you are sleeping or waking or somewhere between. Turns and turns. The sound it makes in the housing, a faint mechanical whisper, has settled into the same register as the breathing of the ship itself. You are not listening for anything. The ears soften in the same way the shoulders soften, gradually, without instruction, simply releasing the task of listening for meaning that was never in the sound to begin with. There is a long, low creak somewhere in the frame of the bunk, and the wool shifts slightly against your shoulder as the ship takes another angle of swell and then settles, and you feel the way your own body settles with it. The chest dropping just a little, the hips finding the mattress a little more fully, the muscles along the back of the thighs letting go of something they had been holding without your knowing. You breathe in, and the chest rises, and somewhere below the waterline the ship is rising too, the same slow movement, unhurried, governed by the same dark water, and when you breathe out the chest falls and the ship falls, and there is a moment where you cannot tell the difference between your own breath and the motion of the hull, between your own settling and the seas. The face, it goes soft around the eyes first. You can feel it, the small muscles at the outer corners releasing, the eyelids growing heavier still as if they are drawing something down into themselves, as if the whole face wants to follow them inward and downward into that same quietness. The jaw loosens. There is a softness at the hinge of it, where tension had been held so long you had forgotten. It was tension, and not simply the shape of things, and now even that loosens, and the mouth is barely closed, barely anything at all. The gust comes again, a different register this time, finding a corner of the superstructure you have not heard before, and making a new sound, and for a moment you mark it as different, and then the moment passes and it is already becoming familiar, already folding into the texture of the night, already indistinguishable from the last sound and the next. This is what the dark ocean gives you if you have been still long enough. It takes your categories away, one at a time. It dissolves the difference between signal and noise, until everything is only the continuous sound of a ship moving through water in the dark. The shoulders have dropped now, lower than they were an hour ago, lower than they were a few minutes ago. The arms lie where they have fallen. The gust passes somewhere above, and you do not mark it as anything at all, not anymore, just sound, just the dark, just the slow weight of the body resting against the wool. Chapter 10. The dark behind eyes. The porthole is dark grey and nothing. You could look at it, but you are not looking. The eyelids are closed, and behind them is a darkness that is warmer than the one outside, closer, more particular, entirely your own, a dark that has the faint warmth of the wool somewhere along the edge of it, and the slow sound of the engine somewhere very far beneath it, as if all of it has been moved to a great distance now, as if the entire ship and the dark water and the Lofoten wool passing to starboard in the rain have all been moved back, carefully, while you were lying here, to the very edge of where sounds can still reach you. The cliffs are out there. You know this, the way you know the radar is turning and the engine is running and the rain is moving across the porthole glass in thin, cold lines, as facts that ask nothing of you, that continue without your participation, that do not require you to hold them or watch them or do anything about them at all. The cliffs pass at 4 knots in the dark and you are not tracking them. The course continues. The bridge has the watch. There is nothing you need to find or steer toward or away from. And so there is only this. The wool, faint and warm, its weight distributed across the body so evenly that you can only find it at the edges now, at the place where your arm meets the fabric, at the place where the collar is pulled up, and the warmth underneath it is a different warmth than the warmth above it, denser, quieter, more gathered. The wool has taken the heat of the body for hours and returned it slowly, and the boundary between the body's warmth and the wool's warmth has become something you can no longer trace precisely. They are the same warmth now. They share it. The sway, you notice it less and less, or you notice it differently, not as movement, but as something more like breath, more like the chest rising and falling with no reason given and no record kept. Simply the body doing what the body does while you are not attending to it. The ship sways, and the body sways with it, and the sway is so slow now, so gradual, that it has become indistinguishable from the rhythm of your own breathing, the in and the out, each breath going out at the same slow rate as the last, each one a fraction shallower than the one before. The body finding its floor. The rain is somewhere. Each one, it is on the steel. You know this, but it is far now, very far. A texture at the outer edge of attention, like a sound from another room, had long ago, and no longer made out. The rain falls on the ship, and the ship carries it. You carry nothing. The inside of the eyelids is dark and warm. The breath moves in, slowly, and then slowly out. The wool holds its warmth without effort, without asking anything of you at all. The sway is the breath now, or the breath is the sway. And there is no difference that needs to be resolved. Somewhere the cliffs are passing in the rain, somewhere the radar turns. The sound of the rain on the steel is very far now, a sound at the edge of a world you have almost left. The body finds its floor, breath in, slowly out. The dark behind the eyes is its own place now, without edges, without requiring anything of the hands or the face or the slow heavy legs. Just the warmth of the wool and the sway that has no name. Just the dark, continuing quietly on its own. Chapter 11. Sway and breath. The roll comes again. Gently, the whole bunk lifting and settling in a motion that has no urgency and no destination, only the slow return of a weight that knows where it belongs, and you find that your breath has been following it, that you have not been choosing this. The wool against your cheek is warm with the warmth of your own face, and it carries a slight lanolin smell, something fibrous and old and good, the smell of a thing made for weather, for exactly this weight and this dark, the roll again to port, very slightly. The bunk settling a degree or two toward the wall, the hull holding the weight of the water as the water holds the weight of the hull, each carrying the other through the dark, and then back, slowly, and your breath has gone with it, in when the ship rolls to starboard, out when it comes back to port, or the other way now. You have lost which way the ship is turning, and it does not matter. The motion is all one motion, a breathing that belongs to something larger than your chest, something that includes the sea and the dark and the steel that contains you. The wool is between your hands and your chin, and the warmth there is your own warmth returned to you, steady and unhurried. Somewhere above the bunk there is a sound. A gust pressing the vessel sideways for a moment, the rigging carrying something across the distance between where you are and where the weather is. But it has already passed before you finish noticing it, and the roll comes back again, regular as breath, patient as tide, in and slowly out. The cliffs are somewhere to starboard, and you do not need to see them. They are dark rocks standing in the rain, and they have stood this way for 10,000 years, and they do not require your attention. They do not need a witness. They are simply there in the dark, as you are simply here in the dark, each doing what you do, the rock standing, you breathing. The ship carrying you both through the space between, the roll again, the bunk taking the weight of the water's lean, the wool holding the heat you have made and kept without thinking about it. Your breath does not hurry. There is nowhere it needs to arrive. In carries you one direction, and out carries you back. And you do not need to go further than this. The space of one breath is enough space for now, for the whole weight of your body and the whole dark behind your eyes. In and slowly out. The hands are heavy, the jaw is loose. Something in the upper chest has stopped holding itself, has given way to the bunk and the wool and the slow lean of the hull in the water. The slow work of the vessel through the passage is the only work being done now, and it does not need your hands, does not need your face. Your lungs are doing only what lungs have always done, without asking, without knowing, in the dark that is complete and warm and moving, and without edges, the wool, the warmth, the sway, in, slowly. Out, the roll comes again, and you are already part of it, already moved before you knew you were moving, the body given over to the motion of the water and the wool and the dark that goes quietly on without you, in and slowly out.